Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Everything Theater Podcast Backstage episode, our second one. I'm Ellen Cribbs.
And I'm Benita Zahn, and I really do feel backstage. I know we're not wearing any makeup.
No.
There's no costumes. This is us. And this is how you and I met, sitting backstage at Capitol Rep when we did Shakespeare in Love.
Ah, I miss it so much.
Me too. You
So
know what's
much.
so great about that, and this is something we can talk about also, is the family that we made in that cast, and how so many of us have stayed in touch with each other.
Yeah. I know so many times I've been in a cast and people at the end of the night think, okay, or, end of the show say, see you never, unless we do another show together. But it's so important to make that effort to keep that connection. And I think especially, you're right, in that cast, there are so many people I still talk to and still keep tabs on because it is a family.
It is. You know, Lori, who played the Queen.
Uh-huh.
And many of you know, if you don't now, you will. I was diagnosed with breast cancer while we were going through the show. It's a big thing for me to talk about that stuff. And thank you, Lord. It was very early and the support from everybody. But Lori texted me every day when
Mm-hmm.
I went for radiation.
That's
She was
amazing.
there with me. It was like, what a blessing.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't think people always realize that you can forge friendships
Mm-hmm.
like that. So we can talk a little bit about that. And you know, we always end our podcast now when we do backstage. If you've got a backstage friendship that was forged that you didn't see coming, let us know about it. Share a little story about it.
I love that. And speaking of our questions from last time, we got some responses. First of all, we posed two questions. We asked about people's favorite masks and people's experience through all this. So,
Right.
real quickly, touching on the masks because there was some fun ones. Someone talked about their Ruth Bader Ginsburg mask, which
I
is
love it.
amazing. Someone talked about a 3-layer mask, which I had never even heard of before, which I think is there's a lot of discussion now about layering masks and how
Yes.
that's even safer. There's I know that there's that singer's mask for people on Broadway that basically looks like a giant duck beak
Hmm.
that
Kind
lets
of like
them
a
breathe.
bigger version of the KN95.
Right. And then actually someone did have some theater masks. There was like a Phantom and a Hamilton and Sondheim, and said that the proceeds were going towards working artists, who are people who are out of work because of the
Right.
times. So that's really cool. So yeah, we'll post some of that on our Facebook so that people can see the pictures and find some of these cool masks.
And
Uh,
right? That would be great. I really would like to see that, especially the singers' masks and how to get our hands on it. You know, I sing with Jerry Gretzinger, my 4 p.m. co-anchor,
mm-hmm.
and you know, he's my bubble. But
Yeah,
when we rehearse, and we've been rehearsing at his house, I walk in. Sometimes I walk in masked, and then we go to our separate corners,
right.
probably 12 feet apart,
Mm-hmm.
and sing.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and leave. But we're going to be recording at Cafe Lena February 6th.
Oh,
Um,
fantastic.
and we're doing it as a concert for the folks who live at Wesley. And if you're not local, Wesley is a nursing home in Saratoga Springs, a wonderful facility, but like so many others, you know, the residents have been locked in,
Yeah.
and COVID ran through there just recently with, you know, a very difficult
Mm.
situation. But then when you're on the stage at Cafe Lena, we're a little bit closer. We're barely 6 feet. So that mask is kind of a neat idea.
It's pretty cool. I mean, especially for voice lessons for people to continue practicing, to be able to be with their accompanist in
That's
person.
great. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we have a few other stories from people who are talking about just their experience. We have someone, Samara, said that she worked on Broadway as a publicist prior to the shutdown.
Hmm.
And once shutdown hit, she was furloughed within 3 weeks and then laid off in the fall. So, ugh, I mean, it's awful.
And she had to
Um,
move back home.
she moved back, yeah, upstate because it was so expensive in New York City. And I wonder how many theater artists still live in the city. I mean, right now,
Mhm.
unless you really had a great job supporting you.
But
But
you
she's,
know, Samara's got something. She created a company called Broadway 360.
which is funny because I remember we workshopped that title for our podcast at one point. But yeah, and I looked it up a little bit. It's all about kind of the backstage of theater. It looks really interesting, so check that out.
We may have to get a hold of her for a podcast coming up.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
Samara, if you're listening,
Mm-hmm.
we'll be talking.
Let's see. We also had Emily, who works at a K to 12 school and ended up
Yeah.
doing their productions online, doing production of Almost Maine,
Mhm.
and another one that's student written that was pre-recorded. So we're seeing a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, we've
I
got
got it.
Patrick, good old Patrick White, gave us our number because when we interviewed him at the end of the year, he didn't tell us how many shows that he and Chris Foster saw. It turned out it was only 54. And I guessed 57. I was so close. But yeah,
And by
down
the way, a
from
quick aside, 7 and 4 is the most common form of dyslexia, turning those numbers around. So I'm going to give it to you.
there you go. I was right. But yeah, down from 317 shows last year. But I'm sure in 2021 they'll have more than 54.
Yeah. And then, we also heard from Kathleen Kerry, an accomplished local performer. I know a lot of folks have seen her. On just so many things. She's been at Curtain Call Theater, a lot of Albany Civic, really. And I think, like a lot of folks, as we begin to get a little older, she was the primary caregiver. Her mom has since passed, but primary caregiver for her and her dad, and now for her dad. And she points out it's really hard to rehearse and perform when you're in that role. And in some ways, this was a bit of a respite in that she didn't have to feel guilty about leaving home and going to this theater.
And that really speaks to me because I knew I was going to be taking a pause from theater, raising Claire in her first year. And not that I wished all the theaters would shut down, but it actually was really nice because I did do a stage reading in February, and even though I loved it and I am so glad I did it, there was a moment, at the end of every rehearsal, where all of a sudden I would kick back into mom mode and think, I need to get home. My baby's waiting for me. I don't know if she's grumpy or if she needs me, instead of dad. And so I would rush home super fast and felt that guilt of, oh, I just did something for myself. And so if there was any plus from the pandemic for me, it was taking this time to just enjoy her first year of life and
Oh,
take that
it was a
pause.
gift.
Yeah, it was
You
a gift.
know, we can also talk about, if anybody wants to share with us, what gifts has this pause given you?
Mm-hmm.
Because there have been gifts. And I think it's how you look at it. The Hubs and I were having, you may have seen him walk up the steps in the background there, The Hubs appear, sometimes the dogs appear, and you just saw the little girl dog walk by. We have to put a gate by the doors to the office because otherwise she'll bang it up and come on in. She's like, are we recording something? Uh, but the Hubs and I were having a conversation about some of the gifts that we've gotten,
Mm, mhm.
for us as a couple, personally during this time. And it's, look, I always say I'm Pollyanna, but it's how you look at stuff too.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, look at the
Definitely.
time you had with your daughter.
I know. I know. Yeah, I wouldn't trade it for anything. It was really, really special.
Yeah. So I just props I want to give to the folks at the Two of Us Productions, Rare Productions. There you find them
Mm-hmm.
both ways on Facebook. Just had a wonderful time doing Dark Journey with them. It was one of two radio plays and that kicked off their season. So get online, check it out. They are doing I Am a Camera. And that's their next production in March, if I'm not mistaken. I should pull it up right in front of me. But it's wonderful. They're based down in Columbia County, and Constance Lopez is an equity performer. And her husband Steve Sanborn directs, and he's the musical director. I mean, this is a power couple. We've had them on. You've spoken with them, and just so nice. And they even had old fashioned phones because I needed it as a prop. And using props in this time is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
How many props do you use? How much do you need to create the ambiance of the show you're doing if you're doing a reading?
Especially if it's one of those like a shared prop across screen, and then you have to compare with your actor. Well, what do you have at your house that I could try to match as closely as possible?
Right.
It's crazy.
And there's some if you don't follow Broadway World, you can get that, and you can get it for free, to pop up. You don't get all the stories, but to see some of the shows that they're doing, there are a couple of performances that are coming up online that you can sign up for. And do you get cheap, Ellen? Do you, because you get a lot of free stuff? Do you when you have to pay $25 to watch a show? Do you do it, or do you go now? Wait for the free stuff.
Yeah, in these times, I gotta admit, I feel bad, but whenever I see something charged, I'm like, well, there's a lot of free stuff I can watch right now, which is awful.
I
But
know.
I've made my donations. I've been making donations to theaters, so I'm supporting them in that way.
Yeah. And what about tipping? At Cafe Lena, when they were doing live shows, and right now they're not, because the numbers had gotten so high, but they would open it up for tips for the performers, donation to Cafe Lena or tips. What do you think about that for performers?
I think that's a great way to do it. I actually in Chicago, I directed a storefront theater production of Macbeth. We're not in a theater, so I can say that it's okay. And what we did is we knew that we weren't going to be making tons of money, so we didn't really have a stipend we could promise the actor because it was a very, very small theater company and we had a huge cast. So we just did profit share. We just said, hey, at the end of every show, we're going to ask the audience to tip for you guys. And at the end, everybody made like $100 or so in that huge cast because we made that effort to ask for tips specifically for the actors. So that's a great way if people, are wondering, oh, we don't have the funds really to pay these actors in these small, tiny, nonprofit, uh, non-professional theaters. That's one way to give something to the actors.
I probably should take a look, if that how that goes down with equity.
Right, equity's probably a different story.
Yeah. So for the record, no tips when we did Dark Journey. We did it for the kicks and talking about the drinks we're going to have when we can all get together. And that's something that I think we all miss, is that after the show,
Oh
getting
yeah.
together, blowing off steam, talking about all the stuff that went on in that 2 hours.
Mhm. Absolutely.
So listen, I want to let everybody know we are on Instagram now. Very
Yay!
simple, everything theater. We are also on Twitter,
Mhm.
everything theater. So start following us, like us. We'll start posting there as well.
Exactly. Yeah, we've had the Facebook page going, but and now we'll get this, and we're gonna start posting more stuff because we want to hear more from you guys.
Yeah. So share with us for next week some of the gifts you've gotten during this pause and some of the friendships, some good friendship story
I like that.
that came out of your backstage time.
Aw. I like that a lot. And if I can throw one more idea out there, actually, because we our last episode talked to Denise Simon, who works with the youth, and if anybody has any stories about their first production, that could be kind of fun. I don't know, were you a young performer, Benita?
Hello. I think they joke with me. I came into the world going, hello,
Hello.
lights. This
What
is
was your
my better side.
What was your first show?
It would have been in grade school, and I was the narrator.
Hmm.
I think the boy's character was Peter. I have no idea what the show was, but I could read well, I could memorize, thank you, God, and I had a big voice. So I was always the narrator. I was never the ingenue.
Mm.
In chorus, I didn't have a singing solo, I had a speaking solo. How about you? First show?
Technically, it was the best Christmas pageant ever, but I was just a toddler. They were like, throw her in as an angel very last minute, so I don't count that. I count Annie when I was 7, and if I can tell this quick story that I know my mom is going to be screaming, "Get over it!" But it was my first show, and my brothers and my mom had been doing theater for a couple years prior to that, and I would get dragged to all the rehearsals. So I wanted to do theater, but I wasn't old enough. So when I finally was old enough, they were doing Annie. I was like, perfect. And I wanted to play Pepper, the really mean orphan. I thought that would be really fun. So I practiced and practiced and practiced. And I went in and I did the audition. And I get the call, Ellen's cast as Pepper. So I was so excited going to the first rehearsal. And I think I was the youngest person cast. And the director pulled me aside and some other random girl and said, you know what, Ellen, looking at this, I think you look a little too young to be Pepper. So this kid's gonna play Pepper. You're gonna play Kate, who like no one knows Kate the orphan from Annie. And it broke my little heart. To this day, I will never forget over that experience. But it did teach me to be prepared for some heartbreak in this industry.
Oh, yeah. You learned it very quickly.
Very, very quickly.
He was wrong. I didn't even see the production. He
I
was wrong.
totally could have pulled off Pepper.
Of
Being
course you
young
could.
and feisty. Yeah.
Not even
Nothing
the
but little
question.
is fierce.
It's
Um,
funny when the ladies in the neighborhood went to see Annie on Broadway, they came back and they went, "Oh, you should play Annie." They were-
well, I'll say at least like mine was just this tiny little community theater production because I saw a documentary about the original production of Annie, and the kid cast as Annie got sick while they were touring around workshopping before Broadway, and she was out for a few days. They put another kid in, and they decided to keep that second kid. And at
Always.
first,
That's you pulled a
Annie,
Shirley MacLaine.
yeah. And that, oh gosh, to be that young and lose your Broadway premiere. I
I
mean,
wonder what happened to her.
she went on and did some other stuff. Yeah.
Did she?
I have to go back and kind of see what she did, but she had a career after that. So she pulled herself back together. The kids are
And
resilient.
that's what theater teaches you.
Yeah.
Resiliency, get up, dust yourself off, and revenge is a dish best served cold.
Oh, I love it.
All right, kids.
I say that's a perfect way to end the episode. Yeah, so perfect. We'll post those questions to our Facebook, our Instagram, and our Twitter. And we'll look forward to talking to you guys next time.
Everybody take care.
Bye. Oops. Oh, hold on.